Welcome, everyone. I'm Andrew Conley with Clean Fuels Ohio. Glad to be joined here today by Dale Arnold with the Ohio Farm Bureau. Dale, thanks for joining us for this conversation.
Well, thank you, Andrew. It's great to be here.
Uh, Obviously, you work for the Farm Bureau. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role and the Farm Bureau's work as an organization?
Yeah, when we talk about the Farm Bureau is county, state, and national all in one fell swoop. Here in Ohio, we have county farm bureaus. You might think of them as an agricultural chamber of commerce. They do a number of education, outreach, economic development programs. They're governed by a locally elected board of trustees. They have anywhere between probably 450 and 14,000 member families that join, depending on where they're at in the state. The Ohio Farm Bureau Foundation, or Federation, excuse me, is a federation of all 88 county farm bureau organizations, and we do basically what no one county farm bureau can do alone. And so I work in the public policy section here at the state level. I work in energy development issues and work with county farm bureaus on their plans and things going forward. We also have the American Farm Bureau, which is a federation of all state farm bureaus that do things basically on the federal level. And so when you join Farm Bureau and pay your membership, you belong to your county where you live, the State Farm Bureau, and the American Farm Bureau all in one fell swoop. We have close to over 100,000 members here in Ohio and 4.5 million members nationwide. So that's the Farm Bureau.
Yeah, thanks.
My job, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say thanks for that and tell us a little more about what you do, which you were jumping right into.
Yeah, my job, I'm Director of Energy, Utility, and Local Government Policy. And consequently, my job is to help county farm bureaus and our members on anything having to do with energy. My jobs during the day, I help them take a look at different technologies. As you know, a number of things are happening in rural areas with generation, transmission, distribution of energy. I'm working with my members on a daily basis on oil and gas leasing, wind, solar, biomass, fuel cell, coal, nuclear types of technologies, electric generation, fuel production, those things, taking a look at infrastructure in farm areas, pipelines, transmission lines, generation facilities. Also, on their side of the meter, I help them with regard to utility tariffs, on site generation, fuel production, different types of technologies that they want to brace at the home or the farm for demand side management, energy efficiency, transportation, all those things. And I also advocate for them with the Ohio Public Utilities Commission, Power Siting Board, and work with other team members in public policy to advocate for them at both the state and federal legislative levels. And so that's me in a nutshell. And I've been with Farm Bureau and I've been enjoying my job for over 30 years.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And your comments really highlight two kind of key themes for me, which really relate back to the diversity of the Farm Bureau members and their opportunities in this space in terms of, sounds like you have very diverse members from very small family farms to large industrial agricultural operations, as well as a wide diversity of energy generation uses that you highlighted, where, many of these partners and stakeholders could be involved in the production of clean energy and the transmission of clean energy, as well as what we want to focus on today is the actual end use of that clean energy, particularly when it comes to their off-road vehicles that support all their agricultural activities. Is there anything you'd want to kind of add to that overall thematic sentiment?
Yeah, Andrew, I think you hit the nail on the head. When we take a look at our member families across the state, I deal with, yes, folks who are in commodity production, corn, wheat, beans, dairy, cattle, sheep, those things. I also help with regard to greenhouse operations, some very small operations that are a handful of acres, and some very large ones. And so we have a very diverse, very eclectic membership that basically is taking a look at all facets basically of agriculture. Control of energy costs is absolutely huge for all of our members, regardless of size and operation. Next to labor, energy in the form of fuel and electric generation is their largest single cost on the farm. And it's been my responsibility over the last 27 of 30 some years I've been with the Farm Bureau to help them find strategies to control their energy costs. And when you take a look at renewables, renewable energy production on site or megawatt utility scale, as well as consumption of fuels for transportation and doing things on the farm, and different types of technologies that can be used for that are absolutely huge to our members.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we want to drill into further in this conversation. And we're seeing that across many different industrial segments that for our scope working on vehicles for any kind of operation that has a number of vehicles that support the economic activity, those energy costs are becoming more and more of a burden and a cost of doing business. And so most of our partners are looking for ways to control and improve upon those energy costs, particularly in the transportation or vehicle use space. So that is not unique to the agricultural sector, but there are some fairly unique things when it comes to agricultural sector vehicles. Certainly, we see a number of what we would term on-road fleets, like city governments or delivery businesses that have, service type vehicles. But can you maybe speak to both the typical and maybe some kind of atypical or not usually thought of types of vehicles that support agriculture operations from your standpoint?
Yeah, I'm glad you've asked that, Andrew. It's interesting. When we talk about the vehicles that are used on the farm on a daily basis, we have a number of our members who are use a different number of carts, utility vehicles, very much daily to do things on and around the farm. I'm sure a lot of our listeners here have heard of gators and different types of utility vehicles and different things. We have a lot of members who are going, I really want to take a look at an electric gator or an electric utility vehicle. Pickup trucks and things basically for use on road on a daily basis to do a number of chores and a number of errands is huge on the farm. Taking a look at electric vehicles, trucks, and different things, a tremendous amount of interest there. Taking a look at small utility tractors, taking a look at those particular types of things is huge for a number of our particular members. And that's where basically the line is on EV. We also see, farmers are very much involved in ethanol and biofuel production. You hear about low carbon fuel standards. We love working with Clean Fuels Ohio and the Great Plains Initiative to take a look at renewable fuel standards and creating policy, state and federal. And we're doing that work not only with Clean Fuels Ohio, but also part of this team are the Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association, Ohio Soybean Association, taking a look at creating low carbon fuels, those things, biogas, fuel gas, being able to create fuel gas on site using anaerobic is absolutely huge for us too. And we're looking at those things with you.
Yeah, certainly. Could certainly talk to you all day about the energy generation side of this, but for this conversation, I want to drill further into the vehicle side. So
Yes.
just mentioned quite a wide range from small utility type gators to large tractors to even semi trucks that carry feed and fertilizer and all sorts of the other inputs to agricultural production around. So from my experience, and would be curious for you to confirm or expand on, the agricultural sector is really utilizing every type of class and variety of equipment, from some of the standard trucks and gators that most people would be familiar with, to all sorts of specialty combines and tractors and other specialty off-road equipment for their particular agricultural purposes. Is that your understanding?
You're true because you're seeing the challenges there. We've talked for the last few minutes on the small and medium-sized things that many consumers inside of agriculture and outside basically are using that are, for typical on-road or on-site use. What's interesting, you're correct. We have large combines, large tractors, large trucks. We're taking a look at different types of fuels and biofuels as sources for them, and we're also taking a look at electricity. What's interesting about agriculture, that's where the new or uncharted frontier basically is right now. It's interesting when we talk about EV vehicles and large industrial types for trucks and different things, many municipalities, many local governments, many companies are using large trucks and electricity for vehicle applications, or are using a type of gaseous fuel application there. What's nice about those particular concepts or strategies, I call it the home base strategy. If I was a municipality or city government and we have a bus fleet or a fleet of utility trucks or a fleet of trash collecting trucks and different things, they go out and they do their assignments, and they do their assignments on a daily basis extremely well. But they all come back into a home base in the evening where they can be refueled and recharged. In agriculture, that's the big challenge. Case in point, I grew up on a farm, and our farm basically is in 4 or 5 different locations. And so when we went to go do planting or do harvesting, we took the combine from the home base or the home farm to our first farm in one township and did everything there, and then to a second farm, a third farm, a fourth farm. In many cases, that piece of equipment might be 20 to 25 miles away from home base. With that in mind, our fuels and our choices for fuels was rather limited because practicality, you couldn't take that combine down the road and bring it back home every evening to recharge or refuel. And many farmers, that's the main challenge. Portability is huge. Right now, portability lends itself basically to liquid fuels and vice versa. And that's why you see liquid fuels still the fuel of choice for very large types of agricultural equipment. The questions are with regard to logistics, batteries, if you had to haul batteries to and from, weight, those particular types of things, duration basically of fuel, because sometimes you're going to be running equipment for 16 to 20 hours, believe it or not, and in shifts in harvest or basically in cultivation or in planting during the year, which, you're talking about duration there. You're also taking a look at charging infrastructure. We know everybody has charging infrastructure at the home or at the home base for the company where they're at. If you wanted to do that on the farm, you're going to need more than just one charging station. You're going to need several to take care of your equipment. Also, too, working with your public utility is going to be absolutely huge, be it a rural electric cooperative or investor-owned utility. When you take a look at infrastructure for single phase or 3-phase power out in rural areas, do you have the load equivalents? Do you have the infrastructure to accommodate fast charging infrastructure or several modes of fast charging infrastructure? Working with your utility to be able to do that is going to be very, very important. Finding times basically to do that charging is going to be very important too. So there's a number of logistical issues that need to be addressed. And what we're finding out from a number of farmers, what we're finding out from researchers with the Ohio State University and other extension leaders, when that nut is cracked, you're going to be seeing other types of fuel and electric vehicles and different things go into that particular sector. And again, it might be Katie bar to door because you'll see it going in there, but that's where the challenge is. That's where the bottleneck is on agriculture right now.
That makes a lot of sense. And certainly, like when it comes to biofuels like biodiesel, Case and John Deere and some of the major OEMs in the agricultural space have long been leaders in warrantying high level blends in their use cases. But I'm really hearing three core kind of challenges that have their other side of the coin and opportunities that we can discuss. But the three big challenges that I heard in everything you said is one is just market availability of the commercial products that have alternative fuel options. We've really seen in many markets that the markets operate on supply and demand, and so if there's large demand for consumer EVs, that's what gets touched on first. And as we get more and more into heavy duty and specialty equipment and off-road specialty equipment, the product availability right now, commercial availability, is fewer and farther between. Then really highlighted the local operational variability of different agricultural use cases in terms of fields and different operations and different areas, that there's not just a kind of standard you're here every day and home every night and can plug in to that same port. So local operations variability, and then that infrastructure availability in rural Ohio and rural America. There's continued struggles with broadband access and just kind of standard infrastructure, let alone high power transmission or even industrial natural gas lines to key agricultural facilities that might be ready and willing to use electric or natural gas or other technologies, but just not have the local infrastructure there. So it'd face a increased capital cost burden to just get up and running, unlike maybe those in some metro areas that might have a high power line or high pressure gas line, just going right under the sidewalk out front of their facility or something like that. Anything you'd want to add to
Yeah,
kind of those three?
yeah, Andrew, you've paraphrased that extremely well. That's where the challenge is. It's almost like the support infrastructure is absolutely huge. I'm thinking in a lot of rural areas, you could basically adapt and have the support infrastructure for a truck, a utility vehicle, a car, something you use basically to run on a daily basis to and from. No problem with regard to that. But the larger, more power intensive basically uses of equipment, the big stuff, is where basically the challenge is, or the frontier is. People are finding out now too why, when you take a look at it, you can always recognize a farm pickup truck because it always has an auxiliary fuel tank in the back. Why? Because we are constantly carrying fuel, diesel fuel, gasoline, biofuels in some way, shape, or form out into the remote areas of a field, basically for a large tractor or a combine or a piece of equipment. Logistically, those liquid fuels, bio and otherwise, we have the infrastructure for that and are able to do that. It's portable and different things. As I said, challenges are if you had to have a number of batteries that you wanted to switch in and switch out of a tractor, weight, portability, charging, those things basically need to be taken a look at. There are companies who are trying to crack that nut. We're seeing a number of things happening in Europe as well as parts of the United States with regard to that. That's basically where the future is and where we're working today.
Yeah, and those are real challenges, but there are real solutions, as you're pointing to. And I think one of the things that is a point of optimism for me circles back on some of your introductory comments, which is much of rural America will be tapped to be the next frontier of energy generation for the slate of renewables coming on, whether it be wind, solar, biofuels, the list goes on. So that does bode well in terms of opportunities, since many of these locales will be increasingly producing the clean energy. They'll be closer to the production to source and use it at the end of the day as some of these barriers get solved for. Is there anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I tell folks, welcome to my world, because when you take a look at things over the last 30 years, we are going through a huge transition when it comes to generation, transmission, distribution, basically, of energy, electricity, fuels that way. This is the largest transition we've gone through on the entire energy complex since the beginning of all of this in the late teens and early 1920s of the 20th century. We're going to be seeing a number of things in electricity. You know, coal and nuclear will still be with us through mid-century as part of the approach, but you're having a much more diversified energy portfolio. You're going to be seeing generation and transmission facilities in more areas. Many generation facilities are becoming smaller. You're not going to get your power from a facility several hundred miles away. It's probably going to be in your neighborhood somewhere in some way, shape, or form. Helping people understand and appreciate that, creating a collective consciousness to let people know that you're going to be involved in these discussions. It's going to happen on a lot of open rural farm ground, which means farmers all over the state are being asked to be partners with regard to that. There's going to be community issues and concerns with regard to power generation and transmission development and production. Your friends and neighbors need to be involved in the discussion. Local governments need to be involved in that discussion. Senate Bill 52 is just the tip of the iceberg when you talk about power generation development and discussion among communities. When you take a look at climate change, low carbon, no carbon fuels, farmers are being asked to help produce those things. When you talk about ethanol and biodiesel, the ability basically for a low carbon liquid fuel or a no carbon liquid fuel as science progresses is going to be huge. We are going to be involved in that development as well as electric and other things. And so we're very much on the forefront. And as I tell farmers, you need to be involved. What you learn working with one partner in one energy generation or transmission or development project is going to serve you well when you work in a second or third project and as little as 10 to 12 years down the line. Those things have to happen, and many people need to be involved in the project. Many people need to be at the table, advocating their position, discussing their needs, because if you're not at the table, you will be part of the menu.
Yeah, and I certainly know the Farm Bureau takes great care in its work to be very responsive to those needs and nuances of the diverse members that you have. And certainly we've highlighted some of those unique challenges, but I think want to end on the frame of opportunity in both the senses that the agricultural centers of America have a great and growing part to play in renewable energy generation, as well as increasing opportunities in terms of commercially available vehicles and fuels to deploy those solutions right there locally in the operations that they're doing every day. So I think from my standpoint, with recognition of some of the challenges and growing pains that'll come, the future does seem bright for renewable fuels in both the generation and end use in the vehicle operations in agricultural facilities.
Yeah,
Anything you'd want to add?
yeah. We're always in the scope of transition. Andrew, I think you're doing it extremely well. I almost liken it to this. When my grandfather came home from World War I, much of the discussion basically was at that time with regard to technology, how are we going to adapt basically on rural electrification? We're using horse teams and things here. We know how to feed them. They're efficient. We can use them. Why should I buy this tractor and spend money basically on gasoline or fuel and different things and do maintenance on that? Some of the technologies that we have today that are commonplace also went through that transitional process from one technology or mode to another. There was times conflict, tension, a lot of discussion was going forward. There was that new frontier going from animal power to mechanical and motor power. We all recorded that and know basically the outcome with regard to that. You might see it the same thing today. That was the 1920s. We're now in the 2020s, and we're going from what we feel are very comfortable types of technologies that are very commonplace, that we've taken for granted, that are going to transition into other things. It'll be interesting in 2120 how our children, our great grandchildren, our great great grandchildren look back on this era and say, oh, that's how they basically face their transition. It always happens, it always will. We need to welcome and embrace the process instead of sometimes creating conflicts with regard to it. But that's
Yeah.
me.
No, that's a great frame to take away with, and certainly as part of our transportation solutions showcase on our website, where you're likely viewing this conversation, there are links to a host of other fuels and technologies that can support this transition for the off-road sector in general and the agricultural sector in particular. So really encourage you to check out those resources and other conversations. Really want to thank you, Dale, for joining us today and sharing your thoughts and perspectives and expertise, and really encourage folks to follow up with the Farm Bureau on any of these fronts as well. Thank you, Dale.
You're quite welcome, Andrew. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks.